Welcome to our video. Today we're discussing Sweden's evolving stance on immigration. Historically, Sweden was renowned for its open and welcoming approach towards immigrants, especially during the Refugee Crisis in 2015, when it accepted a significant number of asylum seekers. This humanitarian stance made Sweden a beacon of hope for many seeking a better life. However, in recent years, the country has experienced a significant shift in its immigration policies. Driven by political changes and public opinion, Sweden is now adopting a more restrictive approach. The rise of the far-right Sweden Democrats and increasing concerns over economic and social integration have influenced these changes. Stay tuned as we explore the reasons behind this dramatic shift in Sweden's immigration policies. Sweden has a long history of open-door immigration policies. For decades, the country was known for its generous and humanitarian approach to refugees and migrants. This welcoming attitude was especially evident during the Refugee Crisis in 2015. During this period, Sweden accepted a large number of asylum seekers, becoming one of the top destinations in Europe for people fleeing conflict and persecution. The Swedish government and its citizens showed immense compassion, offering support and resources to help integrate these newcomers into society. However, the significant influx of refugees also brought challenges, including strains on public services and difficulties in social integration, which have contributed to the current shift towards more restrictive immigration policies. This historical context is essential to understanding the profound changes in Sweden's approach to immigration. Political shift. In recent years, Sweden has seen a significant political shift with the rise of the Sweden Democrats, a far-right party known for its strong anti-immigrant stance. This party has gained considerable support and influence, shaping the country's current policies on immigration. The Sweden Democrats argue that high levels of immigration strain public resources, contribute to social problems, and threaten Swedish culture and identity. Their growing popularity has pressured other political parties to adopt more restrictive immigration policies. The new government, backed by the Sweden Democrats, has implemented several measures to limit the number of new immigrants and tighten regulations for those already in the country. This shift represents a dramatic change from Sweden's traditionally welcoming approach to immigration, reflecting broader concerns and debates within Swedish society about the impacts of immigration. Economic concerns. Many Swedes are concerned that increased immigration could have negative economic impacts. Some believe that a large influx of immigrants can lead to lower wages, particularly in low-skilled jobs, by increasing competition in the labor market. This concern is often cited by those who argue for stricter immigration controls. Additionally, there are worries about the strain on public services such as healthcare, education, and housing, which are seen as being stretched thin by a growing population. Swedish officials have echoed these concerns. For example, the Minister of Employment and Integration, Johan Persson, has emphasized the need to maintain socially acceptable wage levels and ensure that employment opportunities remain viable for everyone. He argues that uncontrolled immigration could disrupt the labor market, leading to wage suppression and making it harder for both natives and immigrants to find decent-paying jobs. This economic perspective is a key factor in the current shift towards more restrictive immigration policies in Sweden. Social integration issues. Immigrants in Sweden face several challenges in integrating into society, primarily due to language barriers and cultural differences. Learning Swedish is essential for accessing education, employment, and social services, but it can be a difficult and time-consuming process. Without proficiency in the language, immigrants often struggle to find good jobs and fully participate in community life. Cultural differences also pose significant hurdles. Swedish society has its own norms and values, which can be very different from those of immigrants' home countries. This cultural gap can lead to misunderstandings and feelings of isolation for newcomers. Immigrants may find it hard to connect with native Swedes, who are known for being reserved and maintaining close-knit social circles. These challenges contribute to social segregation and marginalization. Immigrants often end up living in separate neighborhoods, attending different schools, and having limited interactions with native Swedes. This segregation can lead to a lack of opportunities and perpetuate stereotypes, making it even harder for immigrants to integrate and succeed in their new environment. Crime and safety perceptions. The topic of crime rates and immigration in Sweden is highly controversial. Many Swedes perceive that immigrants contribute to higher crime rates, rates, a belief often amplified by media coverage and political rhetoric. This perception has fueled support for stricter immigration controls and policies. However, it's important to note that Sweden does not collect official statistics on the ethnic backgrounds of criminals. This lack of specific data leaves room for speculation and debate, making it difficult to draw concrete conclusions about the link between immigration and crime. Without concrete data, the narrative that immigrants are responsible for increased crime rates can be misleading and is often based on anecdotal evidence or isolated incidents. Critics argue that focusing on ethnicity and nationality rather than socioeconomic factors like poverty, unemployment, and social exclusion oversimplifies the issue and unfairly stigmatizes immigrant communities. Understanding the complex interplay of these factors is crucial for addressing the real causes of crime and promoting social cohesion. Public opinion. Public opinion in Sweden regarding immigration has shifted significantly over the years. In the past, Sweden was known for its broad public support for humanitarian policies and a welcoming attitude towards immigrants. Surveys from a few years ago indicated that around 60% of Swedes had a positive view of immigration. However, recent data shows a marked decline in this support. For instance, recent surveys suggest a growing skepticism and concern among Swedes about the impact of immigration on society. Several factors have influenced this change in public opinion. Political rhetoric has played a significant role, with parties like the Sweden Democrats using anti-immigrant sentiment as a key part of their platform. They often link immigration to economic strain, cultural erosion, and increased crime, tapping into public fears and uncertainties. This narrative has been further amplified by media coverage, which frequently highlights negative stories involving immigrants, contributing to a more negative public perception. The combination of these elements, political discourse and media portrayal, has shaped the current climate of opinion in Sweden, leading to more restrictive immigration policies and a shift away from the country's previous openness. This evolving public sentiment underscores the complex interplay between policy, perception, and societal attitudes towards immigration. Racism and xenophobia. Anti-immigrant sentiment in Sweden often intersects with racism and xenophobia. Immigrants, especially those of color, frequently face discrimination and prejudice, which exacerbates their challenges in integrating into Swedish society. This racism can manifest in various ways, from subtle microaggressions to more overt acts of discrimination. For instance, immigrants of African and Middle Eastern descent often report experiences of racial profiling and being unfairly targeted by law enforcement. They may also face discrimination in the job market, where employers might favor native Swedes over equally qualified immigrant candidates. This bias makes it significantly harder for immigrants to find employment and achieve economic stability. Socially, immigrants of color may encounter prejudice in everyday interactions. They might be subjected to negative stereotypes and treated with suspicion or hostility in public spaces. For example, wearing traditional or religious attire, such as hijabs, can lead to harassment or exclusion in schools and workplaces. These discriminatory practices contribute to a broader climate of xenophobia, where immigrants are unfairly blamed for societal issues like crime and economic difficulties. The negative portrayal of immigrants in media and political discourse often reinforces these prejudices, making it more difficult for immigrants to feel accepted and valued in Swedish society. Understanding and addressing these issues is crucial for fostering a more inclusive and equitable society in Sweden, where all residents, regardless of their background, can thrive. Legislative changes. In recent years, Sweden has implemented several legislative changes that have made it more difficult for immigrants to obtain residence permits and citizenship. These changes reflect the country's shifting stance on immigration and are influenced by growing public concern and political pressure. One of the significant changes includes tightening the criteria for residence permits. Immigrants now face stricter requirements regarding employment, language proficiency, and financial stability. Temporary residence permits have become more common than permanent ones, making it harder for immigrants to secure long-term stability in Sweden. Additionally, the pathway to citizenship has been made more stringent. The process now requires a longer period of residency, demonstrating an ability to support oneself financially, and passing a language test. These measures are intended to ensure that immigrants are well integrated into Swedish society before they can become citizens. Specific policies have also been introduced that directly affect the daily lives of immigrants. For instance, there are bans on certain religions religious garments in schools, such as hijabs and niqabs. These bans are justified by proponents as a way to promote secularism and gender equality, but critics argue that they unfairly target Muslim communities and restrict religious freedom. These legislative changes are part of a broader trend towards more restrictive immigration policies in Sweden. They reflect the government's response to public opinion and political pressure to limit immigration and ensure that those who do come to Sweden are fully integrated into society. The Bitcoin analogy. Let's wrap up with an analogy to Bitcoin. Just like Bitcoin has a fixed supply with increasing demand, Sweden's resources and social services also have limits. This growing demand on limited resources has led Sweden to implement tighter controls on immigration. As more people seek to live in Sweden, the pressure on housing, healthcare, education, and employment increases. Similar to how the fixed supply of Bitcoin can only accommodate so many transactions before causing delays and higher costs, Sweden's finite resources can only support a certain number of people effectively. When demand surpasses these limits, it can lead to strains and challenges in maintaining quality and availability of services. While this analogy simplifies a complex issue, it highlights the underlying tension between the availability of resources and a growing population. Sweden's approach to immigration is now more about balancing these factors to ensure that the country can continue to offer a high quality of life to all its residents. To wrap up, we've explored the key reasons behind Sweden's changing stance on immigration. We started with a historical perspective on Sweden's open-door policies and how the refugee crisis in 2015 marked a significant turning point. We then discussed the rise of the Sweden Democrats and their influence on immigration policies, followed by economic concerns related to wages and public services. We also looked at the challenges immigrants face with social integration, the controversial perceptions of crime and safety, the impact of racism and xenophobia, and the recent legislative changes making it harder for immigrants to settle in Sweden. Finally, we used the Bitcoin analogy to illustrate the pressure on Sweden's limited resources due to increasing demand. We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this topic. Do you agree with the new policies, or do you think Sweden should return to its more welcoming approach? Share your views in the comments section below. Stay tuned for our upcoming videos where we'll dive into other pressing issues and global trends. Thanks for watching.